Streaming live from the Paul and Catherine Ranke Memorial Studio, this is TV Free Baltimore. Support for TV Free Baltimore comes from viewers like you. Become a TV Free Baltimore member by visiting patreon.com/tvfreebaltimore.
You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.
Hello and welcome to Maryland Politics. I'm your host, Beth Lawson. In studio this evening, we have Michael Anthony Peroutka, who is running for the office of Attorney General of Maryland. He is a constitutionalist, and like millions of Marylanders, he wants government's abuse of power and violations of our liberties to cease. Mr. Peroutka, welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's very good to be here. I appreciate it.
May I call you Michael?
You sure may. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Beth. I have been in the practice of law for almost 30 years, maybe a little more than 30 years, my brother being my law partner in Pasadena, Maryland. I had the great privilege of being able to serve as on the county council, the Anne Arundel County Council, from 2014 when I was elected until 2018. And in that final year, 2018, I served as chairman of the council. Now, earlier in my life, I helped to found an organization called Institute on the Constitution, which provides courses of instruction to people all over America and in Maryland on their constitutional rights and liberties. In addition to that, or because of that really, I've been a student and teacher of the Constitution for more than 25 years.
Unprecedented abuse of Governor Hogan's executive powers. Forced vaccinations, forced masking, business closures, the picking and choosing of who was closed, who wasn't closed.
Right.
You get the idea.
Yes.
Can you please tell us if these were constitutional? And how, as Attorney General, can you protect us and our rights?
Thank you, Beth. Great question. Yes, they were not lawful. Yes, they were unconstitutional, and it doesn't matter, by the way, what the quote-unquote science might have said. We were led to believe that these actions were necessary because we had an emergency. But the Constitution says exactly the opposite of that. The lockdowns, the mandates, the forced vaccinations, all of these things were unlawful, and they're not justified, Beth, by the fact that there was emergency going on. As a matter of fact, Article 44 of our Maryland Constitution actually deals with this problem directly. It talks about the fact that Article 44 says that the provisions of the Constitution of the United States and of this state, being Maryland, apply as well in times of war as in times of peace, and no deviation therefrom or violation thereof based on a plea of necessity, like a pandemic, or any other plea is valid. So, Beth, nothing could be more on point. These things were unlawful. Now, you asked what can an Attorney General do about it? Well, he can do a lot of things about it. As a matter of fact, unless these crimes are investigated and maybe grand juries impaneled and prosecuted, unless these things are brought to justice, and the people that perpetrated them, like the governor, yes, I'm talking about the governor, yes, I'm talking about the county executives, yes, I'm talking about people in positions of authority, whether elected or appointed in health departments, etc. These people have violated the law, and unless they are brought to justice, these things will not cease. These atrocities and this lawlessness will not cease. And as a matter of fact, this is the only way to deter this kind of behavior. And unless these violations are brought to justice, we don't have consent by the government. We don't have a government anymore.
That's very interesting, and what I would feel is truthful. We've also seen year after year our Second Amendment rights being limited and eroded by the supermajority in Maryland legislature. What worries you the most about these restrictions? What
really worries me very much is the fact that people have accepted them as lawful when they're not. Again, this is a problem with actually the education of the people in Maryland. And just to give you an example, Beth, there are two law schools in Maryland, the University of Baltimore and the University of Maryland. And everybody that graduates from those schools, presuming they pass the bar and begin the practice of law, they take an oath to the Maryland Constitution. That's this document. They take an oath to this document as well as the United States Constitution. But neither of those law schools have a course of study in this document. They don't study it in any systematic way. And so this is a terrible problem. And when these atrocities, for example, occurred in Maryland in the last 2.5 years, Beth, it was not surprising that attorneys didn't know what the law actually said. This is the law. Violations of this law, of this Constitution, are not law. So you asked about the Second Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms says it shall not be infringed. That's perhaps the most sweeping language in the Constitution. It means just what it says, shall not be infringed from anywhere, by any place, by any official. So everybody that takes an oath to the Constitution is bound by that. This idea that we can make exceptions to that for common sense or this or that are really not valid. In a true way, the Second Amendment is your carry permit.
That would be wonderful to be able to have more liberal carry.
Well, that's what the law allows and calls for. It's funny, in some of these quote-unquote laws, these enactments, which make you have to have a reasonable or substantial and practical reason, or whatever the language is, to get a permit. That's absolutely unlawful. You don't need a substantial reason to exercise your right. You don't have to explain your reason to anybody to exercise your right. You just have it. And you have it because it's a gift from God, and it's constitutionally protected. So what they talk about is common sense. What's called common sense gun control is not common. It's not sense, and it's not lawful.
So, as Attorney General, what can you do to protect our Second Amendment rights?
Oh, that's a great question, Beth. What the Attorney General can do is prosecute those who infringe, to investigate, conduct impanel grand juries, bring prosecutions against those who do infringe upon your right to keep and bear arms.
This past legislation, the ghost gun ban was passed. Governor Hogan refused to veto or sign the bill, which made it become law. How can this be challenged in court, and what can you do?
Well, thank you, Beth. The first thing to understand is that it is not law, because, for the very simple reason, because what the Second Amendment says is shall not be infringed, and it is an infringement. Now, I recognize that many people have been coerced or led or indoctrinated into thinking that these things are lawful, but they're not. It's important to understand there's two standards to determine whether something is lawful or not lawful. And the first is that if whatever a legislature passes has to be consistent with God's law. It has to be consistent with the Ten Commandments. It has to be consistent with the Bible. I know that might sound strange to say in such a secular age, but that was the view of the founders, and that's the way American jurisprudence actually is meant to work. That's what the documents say. Now, secondly, in addition to having to be moral, whatever enactment a legislature tries to do must not be beyond the bounds of the Constitution, either the Constitution of the state of Maryland or the United States Constitution. And these things clearly are. They try to justify them by either saying there's an emergency or we need to do some kind of common sense. No, none of those things apply. The Constitution and the constitutional provisions mean exactly what they say. And it's important, I think the real issue, Beth, is that it's important that the American people understand those things. If they understood these truths, and they were able to differentiate between something that looks like law, smells like law, but it's not law, it's just an enactment. As a matter of fact, in the Declaration of Independence, let me make this point. In the Declaration of Independence, our founders were complaining about the Stamp Act, the Tea Act, things that Parliament was doing that they knew were not lawful because Parliament did not have the authority under the charters of the colonies. So they knew that they weren't law, and they didn't call them law. They called them acts of pretended legislation. That's in the Declaration of Independence. And I think it's a term that we should remember and that we should use because it's not only historic, but it's very accurate. And as a matter of fact, Beth, if you were accused of violating one of those acts of pretended legislation, they called that a pretended offense. So if you are accused of making a ghost gun or whatever, that's a pretended offense because it's pretended law.
Wow, I'm glad you explained that. I've never heard that before. I'm sure our viewers like that explanation as well.
And I don't think, Beth, it's a mystery why they don't understand it, because there is not constitutional education. We have been led away from understanding our documents, and that's what we need to return to. And as an Attorney General, I would like to be the advocate of the people, to be the people's attorney, because I do understand these things, and I would stand up against these acts of pretended legislation.
You mentioned the Constitution, and our rights come from the Constitution and from God. Speaking of that, part of your campaign is to defend the dignity of human life by acting to protect all people, including the preborn as well as the elderly. Can you explain a little bit more?
Sure. You know, Beth, probably the most unsafe place you could be in America today is in your mother's womb. It's a horrible reality, but it is a reality in America today. The preborn are human beings. Life begins at conception. I'm not confused about that like some people pretend to be. And those preborn human beings deserve the protection of the law. And as Attorney General, I would give them that maximum protection. Abortion, in my view, is murder, needs to be dealt with like murder. That's exactly what needs to be done, and that's the way I would approach it as an Attorney General.
And HB 937, the Abortion Care Access Act, allows non-physicians to perform abortions, to basically murder the unborn up to 9 months of pregnancy.
Beth, you hear this term reproductive rights, and this is the excuse that's given for violating the most sacred right we have, which is the right to life. To me, the term reproductive rights, think about it. Reproductive rights means the right to reproduce. If anything, it means the right to have a baby, not the right to kill one. And I would understand that and deal with those who would commit those atrocities as Attorney General.
So, what exactly would you do to protect the life of the unborn?
Well, the way in the preamble to the Constitution, it talks about establishing justice. The way we establish justice in America is that you punish injustice and therefore deter that kind of behavior. And so there's no way around it. There's no way around, I believe, actually bringing these people to justice. You can't, unless you take these actions, this will continue. People say, well, that's too harsh. People say that's too difficult. But we have 60 million babies dead in 50 years because we haven't actually had the backbone to actually get up and defend them. But as Attorney General, I would do that.
Turning to the issue of election integrity, recently there have been many videos, films about people stuffing ballot boxes across key swing states, Michael. If we don't have a secure election, how can we have faith in our government?
Well, we can't, Beth, and that's why it's extremely important that the Attorney General, the next Attorney General, investigate the anomalies that have occurred in Maryland. Now, you've heard in the news that there have been anomalies in the voting in a number of what they call swing states, but there are anomalies that have been evidenced and uncovered. The group, Maryland Voter Integrity Group, I think it's called, Ms. Robin Sachs, I think she's done a super job in identifying anomalies in Maryland, in I think 5 Maryland counties, that are not only serious, but they're all similar to each other, which is an indication that there might have been fraud. So that needs to be investigated by the Attorney General, and I would do that as Attorney General. I would panel a grand jury probably to investigate that and punish and prosecute anybody who has falsified the integrity, the process of elections, or falsified the results of elections. These people need to be brought to justice because, as you say, unless this is done, we don't have confidence that the people that we've elected have really been elected or maybe selected.
The Democrat supermajority overrode Hogan's veto, and now Maryland is a sanctuary state. What powers does the Attorney General have to protect and defend Marylanders?
Oh, well, interestingly, the creation of a sanctuary state really is making an excuse for lawbreaking is what it comes down to. It's actually that the governor will not use his authority to prosecute or to carry out, to execute the laws, which is his duty. But my point is, even if the governor would not do that, the Attorney General still can, and he should. And as Attorney General, I would prosecute those who have violated the immigration laws of the country, and otherwise who are here illegally.
In your opinion, if an elected official or the government obstructs the function or in criminal acts, should they be prosecuted, and how so?
Yes, they should. And Beth, this is an interesting point because it brings up the situation where businesses have violated people's rights by with mandates, et cetera, with forcing people to get jabs, et cetera. And even in nursing homes, they have kept people, they've enforced regulations and said that they have the authority to do this because they're private. However, if businesses have accepted bribes or some kind of offer or some kind of monetary remuneration or something from government, some promises, if there's been consideration for this, then that's a conspiracy. That's collusion between the government and the private industry. And if that exists, that should be investigated. And if it does exist, it's a conspiracy to violate people's rights. And in some cases, as I mentioned in these nursing homes, it could be seen as a conspiracy to commit murder. And these things need to be investigated, and the Attorney General can do that. Even if the governor does not take action, the Attorney General can. He is the attorney of the people, and that's why I want to be the attorney of the people, because other people in this race do not take this seriously. They actually have amnesia about what's going on in the past 2 years. But as Attorney General, I won't have that amnesia.
Please elaborate a bit more on how businesses were forced and coerced into violating people's rights.
Right. This is a very important point, Beth, because I think what's happening as this pandemic and this, I believe it's a plandemic, if you will, has played out, is that government has made deals and side deals or contracts with businesses to force the business to take the action that the government can't take lawfully or constitutionally. So when a business says you have to wear a mask, or a business says you have to get a jab to work here, or a business takes some action like that violates the rights of the employee or the individuals, the customers, they seem to want to excuse that by saying, oh, well, it's a private business, they can do that. However, the point, Beth, is if they have accepted bribes, what amounts to bribes, if they've accepted some kind of inducement from government to carry out these policies, then there is a criminal conspiracy. And that criminal conspiracy should be investigated and prosecuted by the Attorney General. And again, if elected Attorney General, I would do that.
So can you go a little bit further? What about the businesses who don't necessarily want to comply with these overbearing regulations that the government is trying to force them to do, but they say instead, if you don't do this, we will not renew your business license?
Well, that in effect is the same thing, because that's an inducement, or that's a threat. That's just the other side of the same coin, I think, Beth, because that's a threat to do something negative to the business if they don't do what the government says. And then they claim, well, the business did it, it was their decision, and it was they have the free will to do that. But no, this is a conspiracy. And what this brings up, Beth, there's a bigger picture here. There's a larger agenda going on. I really think that some of these things are acts of war against our people and against our culture. This pandemic has been used to violate our Constitution, violate people's rights. It's been used to steal an election. It's been used to ruin our healthcare system. It's been used to end our constitutional system. So all of these things have been done, and many of them in collusion of big business and big government. Once again, conspiracy, unlawful, needs to be investigated, needs to be prosecuted.
Michael, please reiterate for us why people should vote for you and how we can get in touch with you.
Thank you very much, Beth. I think people should vote for Michael Anthony Peroutka for Attorney General for Maryland, because I'm the only candidate for Attorney General who is committed and has pledged to defend your constitutional rights. I'm also the only candidate who has pledged to defend the life of the preborn and the elderly. I'm also the only candidate in the Attorney General's race who has pledged to protect your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. I'm also the only candidate in the race who will investigate and secure voter integrity, and the only candidate pledged to protect the borders of America. Liberty forever, mandates never. Liberty forever, mandates never. Please go to my website, patriotsforperoutka.com, and vote for Michael Anthony Peroutka for Attorney General of Maryland. Thank you so much.
Michael, thank you. It was really our pleasure. Very informative. And audience, thank you so much for watching Maryland Politics. Please like and subscribe to TV Free Baltimore. I'm your host, Beth Lawson. Stay well, and please tune in for our next show.
You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.